Season's greetings, and welcome to another very jolly episode of It's Always Sunny in Hollywood. My name is Patrick.
I'm a Lugia. You know those small guys, those gremlins? Rumors that they're everywhere.
That translates to I'm drum hearts.
Zoink
Yes,
Scoob, it's a gremlin.
So yeah, today it's Gremlin time. But before we gremlin all over the place, let's take a moment to pay our respects to former First Lady Rosalind Carter. She died this past week of natural causes at the age of 96.
Yeah,
So
rest in peace.
quite a long life.
Yeah.
Quite a long life. And she was married to Jimmy Carter for, I think, like 70 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
wow.
Jimmy Carter's still alive, which impresses me.
I know he
'Cause I'm
is.
like, holy shit.
How old is
How
he?
the fucking old is Jimmy Carter?
He's
Jimmy Carter's
99.
older than.
He's 99, and he's been in hospice since February.
Damn.
Yeah, I know.
And now Rosalind was a very active first lady. She was, according to my research, she was one of the only first ladies to testify before Congress. She was also a strong advocate for mental health. So may she rest in peace. You know, good long life. 96 is absolutely nothing to scoff at.
Well, since we're talking about celebrities and Hall got a restraining order against Oates. They made a lot of great classic tracks like Out of Touch is probably their most famous one. Or Man Eater. Yeah,
So
stuff like that.
what prompted the restraining order?
Yeah. So basically, Hall is suing Oates over a plan to sell stake in joint venture. So basically, like it was there was a business thing, and somehow it got to the point where he wanted a restraining order.
Hmm.
Yeah. The case is gonna be taken up at November 30th. So I guess this will be a developing story. So yeah, if anything else interesting happens in this, I'll be sure to let you guys know. But yeah, weird. I know music acts tend to have like the most explosive breakups. It's weird. Like it's never just like, all right, we're gonna stop hanging out. Like I think the Beatles are the only ones that like amicably basically split up. It's like they still hung out after, but like everyone else is just like, oh fuck you, I'm gonna destroy your life. Fucking Eagles or Fleetwood Mac, like that shit was rough. Speaking of musicians,
So, a little bit of context for this one. So, in the previous episode we recorded, we mentioned a story about how Snoop Dogg decided that he would no longer be smoking. This was eventually cut out from the episode because literally a day later, there was an ad for a smokeless stove with Snoop Dogg in it, and that's what he meant by I'm no longer smoking, because this stove literally has no smoke to it.
Smokeless stove, huh? Sounds like
So
something the dad from this movie would make.
he lied to us. God damn it.
yeah, I was so annoyed when I saw that. Come on, man! Like Jesus Christ, I like that's part of like me annoyed at him and me just disappointed in myself that like I gave that shit any attention. I fell for it. I was like, all right, well, I'm never gonna buy that smokeless stove. I don't even remember the brand. I'm just not gonna buy smokeless stoves. Screw you. I'm turned off from the entire concept from now on.
Seltzer brand smokeless stove. No, I'm kidding.
And anyway, in quite possibly the most tragic news of the evening, Aardman is running out of clay and only have enough to make the next Wallace and Gromit film. At least that's what the initial reports are. They have since put out a press release saying that they have been working behind the scenes on a solution to this problem. So, but yeah, basically, Aardman, they got their clay from a very specific whatchamacallit, clay manufacturer, and that manufacturer went down. They went under, and because of that, Aardman was, I guess, in trouble for a little bit because yeah, this is like a very particular clay formula. It's like specifically made for like animation and whatnot because animation is like harsh studio light, so it's the kind of thing you don't want to like melt or bake or anything like that. So yeah, claymation doesn't really use like actual clay. It's more of like a unique plasticine kind of clay.
So is it Gremlin time now?
Gremlin
Yeah.
time.
All right, let's Gremlin all over the place. So Gremlins was directed by Joe Dante, executive produced by Steven Spielberg, and written by Chris Columbus. So, quite a trio of talent working on this film. But what's interesting is that when Chris Columbus wrote the script for Gremlins, he did not expect it to ever actually be made into a film. He simply wrote it as a way to show off his screenwriting abilities. But that script found its way onto Spielberg's desk, and he loved it so much that he's like, we're gonna make this into a movie. Columbus was like, um, okay. And Spielberg originally wanted Tim Burton to direct the film, because at the time Burton was a rising talent, and Spielberg thought this would be a good directorial debut. But Warner Brothers wanted somebody more experienced, so Spielberg tapped Joe Dante, as the two of them had worked together on Twilight Zone the movie. And Dante was known for horror films at the time, like Piranha and The Howling, so we probably know him more for Looney Tunes Back in Action, which was like 20 years after Gremlins. And some fun facts about Gremlins is that the crew originally wanted to dress up monkeys to portray the Gremlins, since that would be easier than making a whole bunch of puppets, and CGI wasn't really an option at the time. They tried this on one monkey, and it reacted how you expect it would. It screamed, ran around the room, and threw its own feces. And Joe was like, you know what? Puppets are probably the better option. Also, in the initial script, Gizmo was supposed to be the main villain, but Spielberg thought he was way too lovable for the audience to suddenly turn against him, so they had a new gremlin, Stripe, made specifically so he could fill that role.
Gotta make that
And
merchandise somehow.
Gremlins the t-shirt, Gremlins the lunchbox, Gremlins the flamethrower! The kids love this one. But speaking of Gizmo, his voice was provided by Howie Mandel. Yes, that Howie Mandel. He's not the only notable voice here, because the voice of Stripe was provided by Frank Welker of Scooby-Doo fame. And this got me thinking, how has there never been a Scooby-Doo Gremlins crossover before?
Oink,
I mean,
oink, Scoob. We can't
both
feed you
Warner-
after midnight. Please, Reggie.
Yeah, they're
Please,
both
feed me.
they're both Warner Brothers properties. Scooby and Shaggy love to eat. Most episodes of Scooby-Doo take place at night. Have Scooby and Shaggy somehow get a Mogwai. They feed it after midnight.
No.
It's like,
Now here's the thing,
it's
Patrick.
perfect.
The
I think
problem
my
is
pitch is funnier.
that makes
where they
too
just
much
make
sense.
Scooby. I think my pitch is funnier where they make Scooby and Mogwai. He's like, please, Reggie, feed me. Feed me after midnight, Reggie.
You see, we need to have no parallels to other crossovers whatsoever, so that's why we have John Cena and Kiss.
Yeah, imagine John Cena just fucking like dive bombing a gremlin into a table.
I don't know. The Scooby-Doo Courage the crossover makes sense. They made that.
Yeah. I don't know.
Scooby-Doo
I know
Gremlins
the
crossover would make as much sense. I'd watch that.
Yeah, I know. Whatchamacallit, that Muppets Electric Mayhem show like made a couple references to the Feebles, that horror comedy movie that Peter Jackson made. So now I'm thinking like, the Muppets, the Feebles, Gremlins are all kind of like these cartoony puppet acts. Feebles are also like horror things like the Muppets. So I'm like, that could make a good crossover.
Well,
I know rights wise it'd probably be a nightmare, but like I don't know. Like I'm just saying, they should make a puppet Roger Rabbit, and Disney should make the same deal they did with Warner Brothers last time for the Gremlins.
we're getting back to Gremlins. It released on June 8th, 1984, which is notable because that was the same day Ghostbusters released. Yeah, two iconic 80s movies in one weekend. Man, 1984 was such a fun year. And it was one of the highest grossing films of 1984, bringing in around $213 million against a budget of $11 million. And it would have a lasting impact on the industry because controversy from parents erupted over its violent content despite its PG rating. And this resulted in the MPAA creating the PG-13 rating. So we have Gremlins to thank for that. For context sake, I've seen this movie, Red has seen this movie, Lugia, you've never seen it before?
Correct. I've only seen the sequel beforehand.
Have you seen the sequel, Red?
I have. I think the sequel's better actually. It's my favorite.
Really?
I have not seen the sequel. I will at some point though. I don't know if I'll make it an episode, but
I'm on
I
make
will
it
get
episode. I really
Alright.
like the sequel.
Here's the thing about the sequel. It is batshit insane.
that. I know it's basically a parody of the first film. It's basically a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah, it is incredibly funny. There was a ton of gags. Also,
Hulk Hogan was there.
yeah, Hulk
Really?
Hogan's there. it's actually funnier now watching it than it was back then because I'm constantly watching it. I'm like, oh my god, those like they have like three Breaking Bad cast members in this show, so it's just really funny seeing like and like Dean Norris, who plays like Hank, the cop in Breaking Bad, he plays like a similar character here too. So like I'm just like imagine like it's in the same universe.
So I guess I'll get into the plot so we can really get into the nitty-gritty. So Gremlins is about a young boy named Billy who is gifted a Mogwai or gremlin for Christmas. And he thinks it's really neat. But there are three rules that he has to follow. One, don't expose the gremlin to bright light. Two, don't get it wet. And three, and this is the most important one, don't feed it after midnight. And he follows these rules down to a T. In fact, no. All these rules are broken, and a whole swarm of evil gremlins run amok throughout the town on Christmas Eve. And it's gremlin time. So, Lugia, why don't you start?
Okay. Um, well, I'm sort of the opposite with Red when it comes to this. I think this was better than the second movie. Granted, I didn't see this before watching the sequel, but I felt like the plot was much more coherent and a lot of the rules with the gremlins were more understandable. Well, for one, they spell it out to you, and two, like it happens in a more natural sequence as opposed to whatever the hell the sequel did.
That's true. It's just like here's the thing. I kind of find like a lot of like the non-Gremlin stuff in this movie to be like really boring, and like New Batch just kind of like cuts to the chase a lot quicker, and like I just think has like funnier jokes. There was like some gags like at the end that were kind of funny with like how fucked up the town got, and they probably wouldn't have been as funny without some of the establishments. But like yeah, I don't know.
I will admit certain scenes do move a bit slow, but I think like the build up to it is well worth it because once the gremlin shit really hits the ground running, this movie is so much fun.
I'm kind of
Yep.
the opposite, actually. I thought, like, when we got to the gremlins, like, taking over the town, that sort of went on a little too long.
You could say arguably that like it's weird. Like New Batch, the second one has like more Gremlin stuff, but it also feels like better paced with its Gremlin stuff, which like I don't know, it's kind of weird like trying to like compare the films because I kind of feel like what's a weakness in the first film is like a strength of the second, and like
And vice versa.
vice versa. Yeah, like so I don't know, it's kind of hard to talk about it,
Well,
but like
putting New Batch aside and just looking at Gremlins 1 in a bubble, what do you think?
I think it's okay. I think it's a good film, but I also think that it's like I just find it like kind of like generic 80s flick for like a good chunk of it, and then like it's only like in the second half for like the really special shit that makes it stand up apart, like really comes through. Because like again, I don't think these characters are particularly that like interesting, and it's mostly just like the relationship with like Gizmo that kind of keeps me going through. And even then, like a lot of that like Gizmo stuff is just very much like ET. It's basically like a lot of this movie is just kind of like ET, but like what if shit got like really fucked up at the end. I kind of like the sort of slow burn suspense they kind of have with like when the gremlins kind of like multiply and you kind of see the scheming and stuff. I think that's pretty cool. Basically what I'm saying is I think Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies did it a little bit better because it was like half the length, so it just kind of sped through the early stuff.
So you said before that this movie was a cause for the PG-13 rating.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
so it was this and Temple of Doom where the sequences were violent, but like it wasn't so violent that it would like justify an R rating, but it wasn't like it clearly wasn't
Remember
like
here
as kid friendly as what a PG would be.
remember when the ESRB made the E10 rating?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
Okay, if we're being 100% honest, the PG-13 rating was basically just a Spielberg exception rule. Like for the most part, like initially that's all it was. It was just like Spielberg wanted to do some like darker stuff, but like Spielberg had like an unbelievable amount of power in Hollywood at the time, and he was like one of the biggest box office draws. So they kind of just like tweaked the rules a little bit so a few of his like darker things could get through. That's like honestly what it is, because this was an Amblin movie too. It was only Amblin movies that got like PG-13 for like a while. So like it was basically just a Spielberg exception. But like yeah, although I would argue most PG-13 movies now would have been PG in like the 70s and 80s. But like that's another conversation.
Was there a further question you wanted to ask me regarding its rating, Lugia?
Not really. I was just gonna point out like some of the reasons why it could be PG-13, like the fact that people die.
And that kitchen scene is that's one of the most iconic scenes in the movie where the mother blends the gremlin, she stabs it, she microids one of them. She kills three of them in the span of less than 2 minutes.
Okay, but that's just a gremlin. I'm talking about like the
I
people,
know
like
it's
Mrs.
it's
Deagle,
still violent. Mrs. Deagle, oh my god, yes.
where she sits on her chair that's supposed to take her like up the stairs, and then one of the gremlins messes with the wiring, so she goes
It
soaring across the stairway at like Mach
shoots out the
5.
window.
Yeah. I mean,
Oh, I
poor
love that
Ms.
scene.
Deagle, but also fuck her. But yeah,
And if we can actually get to the Gremlins part of this Gremlins movie, you got to give credit where credit's due. The animatronic work here is stellar.
yeah, well, especially with Gizmo, I noticed it the most there.
Yeah, and this has some really great like Looney Tunes gags, and you can definitely see why they hired him for back in action because he's probably the only live action director that could make a good Looney Tunes movie. So I mean, we'll see how that Wile E. Coyote versus Acme thing turns out, but you know what I mean.
Another one of my favorite scenes is when they're in the movie theater watching Snow White. It's like even beings as horrible as these gremlins can find some joy in Snow White and the Seven Dwarves.
Well, they'll find joy
Yeah,
in anything.
I like the gag in the second movie where they like even go further with the movie stuff, especially if you see it on home video.
And
Let's see.
speaking of which, so I've given my piece on this. Lugia, is Gremlins a Christmas movie?
Yeah, it's the same reason that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. It takes place on Christmas.
I'd argue this is a bit more Christmassy than Die Hard. Like I think Die Hard is a
Okay,
Christmas movie, but I
thematically,
think
yes.
but speaking of Christmas, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. Kate's backstory.
It
What was your
there.
reaction?
It didn't really have anything to do with the main story. It's just like after the gremlins raise hell on the town, Billy and Katie like go to like a secluded area for shelter, and then she's like, "Oh, let me tell you about the worst Christmas I ever had."
Here's the funny thing about that. That scene was nearly cut from the movie because executives were like, "How the fuck are we supposed to respond? Is this supposed to be funny? Is this supposed to be sad?" But Joe was like, "No, this is a perfect way to describe the movie. It's funny, but it's also horrific at the same time." And they're like, sure, okay."
I just thought it was unnecessary. Like, it's
I thought that
probably
shit
like
was
the
sad.
only interesting tidbit about Katie, but she's not really an interesting character to begin with. You don't need that backstory. It's not about her anyway.
I thought that was like a joke, honestly. Like I thought it was funny. Like I thought like that to me like was one of the things I liked more about the film because it's such like it's like a Gremlins 2 thing where like it feels like just like a tongue-in-cheek parody like it's pointing to the audience and be like, "Listen, this is ridiculous. We know it's ridiculous. This is entirely like a farce." Like I think it's just funny because it clearly to me was like meant to be as a like a dark comedy gag. Like, "Oh, I hate Christmas because of," and like a stupid thing. It's like, it's like when people like made fun of like the Cruella movie where like, "Oh, let me guess, she hates um uh, Dalmatians
Dalmatians.
because the Dalmatian killed her mother." And then you watch the movie and that actually happened. Like I feel like Gremlins is like parodying something like that. Cause like I feel like it is playing it for laughs. Like I don't like I think it is trying to be a little tongue in cheek with it. I don't think it's like meant to be 100% serious. Like, I don't know. Did you guys think it felt serious? Because I thought it was like
I thought it
they were
tried
trying
to
to
be
funny.
serious, it just didn't really go anywhere. Hell, even though she's telling it to Billy, he doesn't even have a reaction to it.
Like I don't know. To me, it felt exactly like the same gag they did in Roger Rabbit, where it was like a tune killed my brother. Like that's a joke. Like that's clearly a joke to me. Like, it's not serious. But like, yeah, that's what I felt like. I feel like this movie is very comparable to Roger Rabbit in many ways. Again, I think Joe Dante like this and Joe Dante kind of like definitely took the torch of Roger Rabbit in some ways. But yeah,
All right, so you're indifferent. Red is found it funny. I found it sad. Like
film is amazing.
maybe
Look at how the
maybe
different emotions
maybe the
it can evoke.
context in that it's brought up is funny, but if you really think about it, her dad dressed up as Santa, broke his neck crawling down the chimney, and was burned to death
Oh, it's dark. It's just like
on
it's dark
Christmas.
comedy
It's
to
just
me.
the
Like I was like,
placement in the
it's like
movie.
it's the placement, but also just how absurd it is. Like it's so like dress up as Santa, like that did burn. Like it's like such an extreme thing to me that like it just kind of reads as comical because it's like
I guess you could read into it as like so dark that it's funny, but I don't know. I just remember when I first saw this movie as a kid, that scene was like, oh my god. There's a novelty Christmas
I feel
song
like it's
about.
definitely something like for kids, it's probably just gonna be like play completely straight horrifying, but like to an adult, it was like it just reads as like a tune killed my brother, and it was like it's one of those things where like you're kind of laughing like in the theater, but like you don't want like your kids to know that you're laughing because they're probably taking it very seriously. It's like one of those like uncomfortable laughs things to me.
There is a novelty Christmas song about Santa being stuck in the chimney. You guys know that one?
Um, Remind me how it goes.
There's something stuck up in the chimney, and I don't know what it is, but it's been there all night long.
I I don't think I've heard that one actually.
Do you know the 12 Pains of Christmas?
No?
Okay, Bob Rivers is a comedian who has a whole Christmas album of Weird Al-like Christmas songs, and those are two of them. Kind of reminds me of that. Granted, I know that is supposed to be a joke, but they never imply Santa's dead in the song. Whereas here, her father is very clearly dead. I don't know. I just wanted to know what you guys thought of that scene.
Anything else?
Gizmo's fucking adorable.
Yeah, he's so cute. I want to purchase many items of him. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
assume they did
what?
sell merch of Gizmo.
Here's the thing.
Oh yeah, of course.
When I was a kid, I used to think that Furbies and like Gremlins were the same thing. Because like I hadn't seen Gremlins as a kid, so like in my head, it was just like, oh yeah, Gremlins, that's like the Furby things, right? And I watched the movie, I was like, those aren't Furbies, what the fuck? Like I don't know, somehow I just never saw. Here's something that I feel like no one wants to talk about. Baby Yoda is like that's just Gizmo. That's just like a blatant. That's a hairless Gizmo.
I
Baby
kind of
Yoda.
see it,
Just
yeah.
yeah. The eyes, the ears.
Does it make similar noises?
Yeah. Okay, I just googled Gizmo. This was the first image that showed up, which I'm sorry, but this has me fucking dying.
What the fuck?
Yeah, really funny. Did the Henson Company work on this? Because like the
I
puppetry was
don't
like
think
so
so.
good, like it makes me think that it might have been a Henson thing. Because I know they were kind of the go-to puppeteers during the 80s. Doesn't look like it is. Interesting. Interesting.
I've said my piece. I think this is a pretty fun alternative Christmas movie.
Yeah, I'd give it a thumbs up.
It was pretty good.
Definitely recommendation. I mean, it's a classic. I'd really be surprised if there was like anyone here who like wasn't at least familiar with it. If you like the Looney Tunes, you like kind of horror comedy, like the Feebles, you like I don't know, Jimmy Neutron. Watch this. Yes, now to talk about Jimmy Neutron Attack of the Twonkies. So, that's a really good episode. But here's the thing. Have you played the video game?
No,
You
I'm
haven't
not.
played Attack of the Twonkies.
no.
Really? It's like one of like the best licensed games. It's like Battle for Bikini Bottom's level. It's kind of like Ape Escape or like a Ratchet and Clank type thing. Like definitely like a very PS2 platformer thing. Also, if you like Gremlins, play Ape Escape. That's a really good game. Any of them, all three are good. I'd recommend the first one though. That's probably the best one. Make sure to have a dual analog controller. Yeah, just know the game aired like 2 months before the actual episode came out, so like that must have been
The
confusing.
game aired.
The game
The
came
game
out.
aired.
The game came out 2 months before the episode aired. Okay, I
Anything
don't
else to
know.
add about Gremlins, Lugia?
Uh, no, I don't think so. If you, well, I will say this though. If you want to watch Gremlins 2 without wanting to watch Gremlins 2, there is a Key and Peele sketch that literally explains why it's so crazy.
I'll
Yep.
probably watch Gremlins 2 at some point.
Yeah. Also, if you just want to see Gremlins 2 and you don't want to see the first one, that's really weird, but you can.
Okay, listen, it wasn't by choice, okay?
What was the context for seeing Gremlins 2 first?
A Discord movie night, and it just happened to
Okay.
get picked.
Okay.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Further
my
ado, Red.
recommendation now, right? Yes. So,
Yep.
quick question: have either of you seen La La Land?
No.
Yes, I have.
Okay. So I'm debating whether I should choose this movie or another one, but it's not La La Land, but it's a movie similar to La La Land that inspired La La Land. And you know what? Yeah, fuck it, why not? So my recommendation is the French film The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, or I don't know how to pronounce that. Cherbourg. The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, directed by Jacques Demy. Demy is a very prominent French filmmaker. But yeah, that's my recommendation. It's one of the big inspirations for La La Land. I only want to. The episode's only going to be on this. It's not like a double feature deal. But if you want to see La La Land, Lugia, go ahead.
Okay.
But yeah, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg, 1964, directed by Jacques Demy. It was either going to be this or Eyes Wide Shut, and I figured actually Eyes Wide Shut would be like a really weird pick for our first Kubrick movie, even though it's a Christmas film. And as long as one of you guys has seen La La Land, yeah, that's probably good.
Is this one a Christmas movie?
Not really. It's just kind of like one of those like fuzzy musicals. It's a musical. It's a musical.
Yeah, does it have like a winter atmosphere or anything like that? Just curious.
Listen, a key part of the film like takes place on Christmas Eve, like towards the end of it. So that's kind of like the Christmas thing. But like I want to say like most of the movie takes place on Christmas Eve. It's just like the end takes place on Christmas. I kind of associate it with Christmas. And honestly, I just kind of associate musicals in general with Christmas because I just kind of feel like Christmas is kind of one like the same kind of holiday cheer, and a lot of musicals kind of play into that. Like I was thinking about recommending Singing in the Rain. Singing in the Rain has nothing to do with Christmas, as far as I remember.
That's a good like springtime movie.
Yeah, it's either like spring or like specifically December. Is what makes me think of like musicals. No other part of winter makes me think of musicals. Only December. Maybe February because that's the month of love. But January is a month of misery.
I am happy
No musical joys. No musical joy.
I am happy for nearly the past decade we've gotten at least like one movie musical in December.
Yeah, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. I've actually mentioned this on previous episodes as something I want to recommend. Yeah, this is the only Jack Demy film I've seen. He's actually made a couple musicals, but this is the only one I've seen, and I was like, I'm not gonna throw you guys into something blind because every time I've done that, I've deeply regretted it. So yeah, this film also won the Palme d'Or, so it's gonna be another one of those. It's gonna be another film that's gonna be on that list. I don't know how many Palme d'Or movies we've seen so far.
I'll say at least
Let's
like
see.
5.
Because we've seen Pulp Fiction. We've seen all that jazz, right?
Yep.
We've seen Apocalypse Now, and The Conversation. So that's 4. So this would be 5, I believe. Because I don't think we've talked about. Have we talked about Taxi Driver yet?
Yep.
Yes, we have.
We've talked about Taxi Driver. Okay, so this is 6. Yeah, we've done a lot. And have we done Wild at Heart?
Yep.
We haven't done Barton Fink yet, right?
Basically, if it's a movie you've chosen, like with the exception of Taxi Driver.
And Pulp Fiction.
And Pulp Fiction, yeah.
Yeah, and Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. I will figure out how to pronounce it by next week. Maybe we'll talk about La La Land. I feel like we'll just talk about La La Land like in respects because of like, I feel like Patrick, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, this I can definitely see the influence. Like that's why I bring it up. But yeah, we don't have to talk about La La Land. I don't really want to talk about La La Land. I like La La Land.
If I have time to rewatch it, maybe, but no guarantees.
I'll see
Oh
if
yeah,
I can watch
like
it.
I said, this is not a double feature. We're just talking about Umbrellas of Cherbourg. It's just, I feel like I should mention it just because it's such like an obvious thing that it'd be kind of weird not to. I don't know.
So that picture of Gizmo's fucking killing me.
Yeah, I know, it's such a funny picture. Like, oh
It's
my
not
gosh.
the thumbnail. It's not the thumbnail.
It's not the thumbnail, but it's so funny. But yeah,
So
anyway.
yes, Umbrellas of Cherbourg. My apologies if I, pardon my French if I messed that up.
Ask Google.
Yeah.
But yeah, next time. This has been It's Always Sunny in Hollywood, and if there are any Billies watching this or listening to this, hi Billy.